people that white people were committing biological genocide against us, and that by the year 2000, whatever, there would be no more black people, you would get one reaction. But you're saying that we're being threatened with cultural and psychological extinction. How do you get African people to see the urgency of this situation?
Um, I don't know, frankly, if you can. I think that we have to focus on young people, young African people who have not been so conditioned with a way of thinking that supports European imperialism, European power, that they still have the ability to use their intuition, their spirituality, their Africanness to create, to think beyond the limitations that have been given to them in European academies. I think most of us as adults, as elders, have been so conditioned that we're afraid to move beyond the parameters that have been defined by our enemies.
I'll stop it right there. Asking her, basically in a nutshell, can black people fix our situation? Do we recognize what's going on, and can we fix our situation? Is it possible for us to, as a collective, because it seems like he's asking it from a collective standpoint, as a whole, can black people advance our situation? Can we get ourselves out of poverty? Can we get ourselves out of these disparities? Can we get ourselves from under the thumb and from being 100% dependent upon white America? As a collective, as a whole, I don't think that's the desire of all black people in America. I think that's a desire of a number of black people in America. And I think an issue even with that is, once you get to that number of black people in America, there are those who have their specific idea of how black America should be liberated and how black America should be ran. And those ideas compete with each other. That creates conflict, unfortunately, especially from those who consider themselves leaders. That creates conflict. But once again, I just don't think all black people in America even give a damn about us as a collective changing our situation. I do believe that we should be focusing on ourselves as individuals, and once again, finding your tribe. That's what I'm on. Finding your tribe, finding that critical mass of people that you all have enough of the similar ideas to be able to build and create something with. Because you're going to have something to pass down. You're going to have something for yourself and your community that you're with to be able to compete. We have to be able to compete. We have to be able to compete in this world, and right now we're not able to compete, and we have to make ourselves competitive. And is that gonna happen for everybody? I just really don't think so. She also talked about focusing on the youth rather than the adults, because pretty much most of the adults are, or if not too many of the adults, are so far gone. Focusing on the youth. Now, I did like the way she said that, because she's talked to me. What I heard is she's talking about a group of children who have been exposed to information that can liberate their minds to knowledge of self, just lack of better words. The children who have been exposed to knowledge of self, those children who have been exposed to knowledge of self, have the chance to be able to advance the culture, advance as much as the culture, as much as the society as possible. Those who have been exposed to it, and in addition to that, in my opinion, those who have been exposed to that have to be in an environment that cultivates them to be able to be productive. And if that's not happening, then you can say focus on the church, but nothing's going to come out of that. And I'm not saying she's saying that, but that's what I'm saying. But I just don't think everybody's going to make it. But for those who are in that school of thought, we have to we have to be more productive. Let's just say we have to be more productive for tangible outcomes. And we keep saying that a lot, and we're not. But what do you think?
I think we gotta. I like the way she answered it, and
Yeah,
I love her, by the way. Her book on Urugu and other
yeah,
things. I really like her work.
that's gonna be a
Um,
book we read.
yeah, it's a great book. One of the things that I think we have to be real about, that I think Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. is one of the
Oh
few
yeah,
people that's real about it,
hey Blunt.
is that most black people in America don't care.
Right,
And so it's not going to happen the way a lot of people in the pro-black community have been conditioned to think it's going to happen.
right.
I would argue that it's not going to happen at all, not in mass.
Nah,
I
not a
think,
mask.
yeah, I think there are going to be small silos, small communities, small towns that
Mm-hmm.
spring up. But as far as a mass movement that reshapes America, that's not going to happen.
Nah.
Um, and so I appreciate her opinion of saying she doesn't think so to the initial question asked. Um, but I'm taking it a step further, even in reaching out to the youth, because I think a lot of times we forget about how connected everything is. I've been saying reach out to the youth for a number of years, and I've actually been trying to reach out to the youth
Yeah.
for around about a decade now. And one of the things that I've learned from that is you can't get to them soon enough.
Yeah, you got to get to them as fast as possible.
Right. And you just can't, because you need to get to them before society does. The problem with that is society gets to them before they're born. Like
Yeah. But
while they're still in the uterus, they're absorbing sounds, sense, the mother's emotions, foods. All of these things are coming in that are already pre-programming the way this child is going to be wired. So when you give, and that's the problem is a lot of us have this idea that we give birth to a clean slate. No, you give birth to something that's already been pre-programmed.
yeah.
So you got to start the child's educational process, and education means indoctrination. You have to start that process by deprogramming.
Yeah.
And
But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. Finish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things that used to bug me when doing community work in the past, I have a better understanding now, and I have a solution, and I'm explaining all that. But one of the things that used to bug me is, all right, we're constantly in these communities working with these children,
Mm-hmm.
but we can see progress in a small percentage of these children. Now we're impacting them positively. All of them are being positively impacted. We can see all of these children are learning new things, and all of these children are being exposed to new things, and all of these children are being able to see new options. But all of these children not going to be able to exercise all these things because of the environment
Right.
that the child is in. And then getting to what you were saying, and it kind of souls up everything, because I'm gonna just say it, a lot of time y'all parents mess it up for y'all kids. Let's just say it what it is. Like I've been saying, I don't know how to say it. No, why say it any other way? The us adults and these parents, we be messing it up for the kids. Um, a community word for it is wraparound services, right? Or
Right.
wraparound support, or work, whatever you do, because the total environment has to be affected if you think you're going to positively affect these children, unless the children comes from an environment that's already conducive to their learning and them being better. But if not, you're gonna have to affect the whole environment.
Right. You and We're talking about wraparound services. We're talking about THC or the total human concept. We're talking about a lot of different things that have to be on the straight. And then we go back to, and this is why it takes a village, because it's too much to do for one person, even for a collective two parents. It's too much to do even with one
Yes.
child
Yes.
to
But
try to deprogram and reprogram.
but also we got one of the things that I took a step back to get my economics together.
Mm-hmm.
Because another thing that was aggravating the hell out of me is I couldn't make a greater impact because of the lack of resources.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that I need to increase my economics. I need to bring in more money. Basically, I need to have more money at my disposal to be able to put back into my community, right? And that's going to be one of the ways that I can more positively affect these kids, because also being in these communities, understanding the psyche of these kids want to see success, and these kids need to be able to see success. So we have to be successful, and we need to be successful on all types of levels, but we need to be successful. They need to be able to see somebody who's wealthy, who's not an athlete, a rapper, or a drug dealer, anything like that. And I'm not saying you as the individual have to be wealthy, but I am saying we need to have access to resources. And if we don't have access to resources, we're not really serious about affecting the youth.
Right, and that's where it goes into what's being said a lot now, although in a different sphere. It's something that um is still being said and needs to be said a lot more, is that we've got to start treating businesses like businesses.
Yes.
And stop treating them. Look, community service projects are cool when
They
the
need to be ran like
community,
businesses.
right, when the community is overflowing with resources, then you can run your community service project like a community service project, because the resources are available to do that.
Right.
But what we have to understand is, and again, it goes back to this total human concept, which ties into wraparound services and all of that. We're not just trying to instill ideas into children. We're trying to get them to look at the world differently. And that means give them a different way to look at the world. You've got to show them that. So it's and that also means showing them different environments. I'm all for going into the hood and showing the kids in the hood how to clean up their environments and this, that, and the third. But you've also got to show them environments that's already happened then. Show them environments that have already been improved.
That's why it's so bad. Like, I'm working my ass off to get these resources, because one of the things that's a part of my nonprofit is a research portion where I want to take underprivileged Black children, and we go as far as we can around the world and around our community, around the country, doing actual firsthand research, so that way they get to learn something and see something new. That's one of the goals. So it's like that's why I'm busting my ass to do this. But it's just from all of my years working in the community, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned is, no matter how bad you want to make change, your plan of action has to be tailored for that specific situation to deal with the issues and the root of that specific situation. Take your ego out of it, because if your plan of action is not specific to tackle the problems that's in front of you, you're not going to do nothing but make the problems in front of you worse for the people who have to experience it. And you're going to make it worse for the people who come behind you who try to help.
And that's exactly why when we did the community development plan, we structured it as a scaffolding the way we did, was because, like any national plan that tries to dig down into the weeds and the specific is going to fail.
Yep.
It's got to be something. And that's something that I think we spend so much time thinking about the big picture that we miss the fact that the big picture oftentimes is a generalization that isn't going to work for the specific instances that people live in.
The pieces of the puzzle got to be put together in order for the big picture to be there.
But these are the conversations we have when you're having conversations like like we've been having on a philosophical level, but when you start having these conversations on a strategic level, when you're analyzing your environment and starting to come up with plans to improve the situation, and you're having problems, and the conversation is centered around the problem with the black community is, you're already on a path to
Yeah.
fail your local black community.
Yeah. Because
You're
you're thinking
already
too
there.
broad. You're thinking too
Right.
broad. You're not thinking what's in front of you. But
Right.
yeah, but let's continue. Yes, yeah, this is gonna be a good one. So yeah.
Our thinking, so that our vision is limited. And so we are really not the people who should be conceptualizing the plans, the movements, what we should be building. But I focus on the younger people who hopefully are still more in touch with what is natural to African people. And if I can affirm that in them, they will see the urgency. I find that in my teaching. I find that in teaching young people, that once they are affirmed and introduced in a conscious way to the African worldview, it becomes crystal clear to them. And they see in an urgency in us as African people building for self, as opposed to imitating forms which have been put in place to make sure that we continue to be oppressed.
Culturally,
Right there.
Yeah, I was gonna stop. You probably think of what I'm thinking, so go ahead.
I don't know. I will say this is one area where I kind of disagree with her a little bit. So the background of the book is that the book was, according to her, the first attempt at understanding the European model of the world from a non-European perspective.
Mhm.
Right? So she's looking at things not from the eyes of a European or somebody that's been taught and educated and brought up through European systems, but as somebody that's been brought up through African systems.
Mhm.
The problem that a lot of us are going to have, one thing that I've learned, I'll say this, in my dealings with kids, is that the natural view for them is the American view.
If you over here.
Yes, if you're here. So the new systems that she's talking about being created are going to, for those systems to exist in the way that she talks about in her book, those systems are going to have to be developed by people that are not African Americans, that are not black people in America. So then you run into this situation of, will those systems be beneficial to black people in America because they weren't conceptualized by people that were or had the black American experience?
Yeah. So we're in the same ballpark. Okay. Because in addition to that, my question will be, where now in 2020, because we have to think about this in 2022. Not
Right.
we can't think about this in the time where she said this, but thinking about this in 2022. But I still believe that this is just as relevant. This was just as relevant when she said when this happened as it is now. Are we are there any African cultures, mindsets, ideologies, ways of life that exist in today's world that have not been affected by European domination, have not been influenced by European domination, that have not been in some way dictated by European domination?
Not any major ones. I mean, because you got to think, the mere act of observing changes. So if white people know about it, then it's been changed just by white people observing it.
So, right. So, with that being said, if there are no, or if there are very few purely African worldviews that have not been affected by European hands, once again, like what you said, for us in America, for black people in America in 2022, for one, will that mindset really, or will those ideologies really take hold? And like you said, two, are those ideologies really what we need for Black Americans in 2022? Or do Black Americans in 2022, like we said in a previous breakdown, do we, because I think I'm just saying, I think we need to come up with concepts and things on our own, and we're gonna have to live with the fact that we are people globally who have been affected negatively by European domination. So making it as for those of us who know better and who are changing the consciousness and the mindsets, ideologies of how we exist as much as possible, we create something on our own that'll be tangible for us here in America right now that we can use right now, not something that'll necessarily be foreign and have to be given to us to use, but something that we created on our own, that we've cultivated. Because it just, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I feel like that would just suit us better.
No, I